I get a lot of messages from folks who are standing in front of a blank wall, wondering whether a motorized floor-rising screen is worth the space it takes up, the extra cost, and the hassle of installation. The fear is simple: spend a good chunk of money on a screen that ends up looking decent in the showroom, but feels like a compromise when the lights are on and the room is being used for everyday life. That's why I'm going to walk through exactly how the SilverMagic ALR CLR Motorized screen performs in a real home setting, what kind of environment lets it shine, and where the value actually lives beyond the 120-inch headline. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the problem this screen tries to solve. Ultra short throw, UST, projectors are fantastic for living rooms because the projector sits just inches from the wall, eliminating the need for a ceiling mount and keeping cables tidy. The downside is that a standard white screen can get washed out the moment you have a lamp on, a window glare, or even a few candles flickering. That's where the 95% ambient light rejecting, ALR, surface becomes critical. In my testing, the microstructured coating really does channel most of the light coming from the projector directly back to the viewer while absorbing stray room light. The result is a punchy contrast that feels more like a dedicated home theater than a bedroom movie night. Now, the floor-rising part. The screen drops down from a recessed box in the floor and pulls back up with a quiet motor when you hit the remote. The first practical thing you'll notice is the footprint. You need at least a 20-inch clearance in front of the screen for the screen to fully deploy, and the box itself sits about 2 inches deep. If you have a rug or a low coffee table, you'll have to rearrange those items. That's a trade-off most people overlook until they try to fit it into a cramped apartment. On the upside, once the screen is up, you get a clean wall with no visible frame or border, perfect for a minimalist aesthetic. Installation is where many buyers hit a snag. The kit comes with a metal housing, a motor, and a set of brackets for anchoring the unit to the floor joists. You'll need a drill, a level, and a friend to hold the screen while you secure the housing. The instructions are clear, but they assume you're comfortable working with basic carpentry tools. If you're not, you might end up calling a handyman, which adds to the total cost. The good news is that the motor is powered via a USB cable, and the screen can be synchronized with most UST projectors that have a USB trigger port. That means you can program the projector to turn on, raise the screen, and start playback with a single button press on your remote or even a smart home routine. Let's get into daily usability. I set the screen up in a 12 by 18 foot living room with a large window on the opposite wall. With the curtains closed, the screen delivered a deep black level that made the projector's HDR highlights pop, even though the projector itself is a 500 lumens model. When I opened the curtains a crack, the ALR coating still rejected most of the spill, and the picture stayed vivid. In a bedroom setup where I leave a bedside lamp on, the screen performed just as well, no ghosting or washed out colors. The motor itself is barely audible. You hear a soft whir when it raises, but it's not enough to be a distraction during a quiet scene. One practical strength that often gets lost in the spec sheet is the screen's active 3D compatibility. I ran a passive glasses 3D movie, and the screen's surface didn't introduce any ghosting or crosstalk that can ruin the 3D effect. That's a plus if you plan on occasional game nights with a 3D headset or a family movie marathon. The 4K per 8K support is also genuine. The screen's gain stays consistent across the higher resolution spectrum, so you're not losing detail when you switch between 4K streaming and a native 8K source. Of course, there are weaknesses to keep in mind. The most obvious is the price. This isn't a budget screen, it sits in the upper mid-range for home theater enthusiasts. If you're only using a projector for occasional presentations, the investment might feel disproportionate. Also, the motorized mechanism, while reliable, does add a moving part that could eventually need service. The manufacturer offers 3 years of dedicated support from a Chicago-based team, which is reassuring, but it's still a point of potential future cost. Finally, the ALR coating, while excellent at rejecting ambient light, can be a bit unforgiving if you accidentally scratch the surface. A cleaning cloth designed for delicate optics is recommended, and you'll want to avoid abrasive cleaners altogether. Who should buy this screen? If you already own or are planning to buy a UST projector and you want a large, immersive image that works in a well-lit living room, this is a strong match.